Good evening, everyone. So last weekend was a pretty exciting weekend in the church because right now in the church normally, May and June, we're in the midst of ordination season. We have all these new priests that get ordained right around this time every year all throughout the country, throughout the church. So as the rest of us, myself, start to get older and older, we have more and more baby priests, as you call them, that start to come out and be able to be pushed right into parish ministry. One of those that we got to celebrate last week was now Father Robert Ross, who was with us last summer and has been in the seminary for the last 8 years. They'll be celebrating our Mass of St. Joseph tomorrow morning. He was ordained a priest last Saturday, along with a couple of other young men who were ordained transitional deacons to be ordained priests next week. It was an exciting time. So, we have a future priest here. So normally, as a priest, you get to celebrate your first Mass of Thanksgiving at your home parish. So last Sunday, I had the opportunity to be with Father Robert as he celebrated his first Mass, and he did a wonderful job. I'd like to share something that he said. So before Mass in the sacristy, all of us priests were gathered around and we said a prayer before we started. And he offered this prayer that has been often attributed to Mother Teresa of Calcutta. It goes like this. Let us celebrate this Mass as if it were our first Mass. Let us celebrate this Mass as if it were our last Mass. Let us celebrate this Mass as if it were our only Mass. That always cuts to the heart for me whenever I hear that prayer. Because to be honest, I don't do so well with that. Think about all the things that could potentially be on your mind as you're walking into this church. Something falls and breaks right before Mass. We have an incident in the bathroom. Someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, Father, I need to tell you something." That goes in one ear and out the other. Your mind is scattered everywhere. And so it's a struggle for me to make this the Mass as if it were my first, my last, or my only one. And I would venture to guess that it might be the same for a lot of you. How many of you, without raising your hands, your minds are somewhere else right now? Whether or not you want them to be. Maybe something happened earlier today, and you're just it's not sitting well with you right now. Or maybe you have to be somewhere, and so you're thinking about, what do I have to do right after I leave here? Or maybe for some of you, you just do not want to be here. How many does that describe in a typical Catholic church? So today's the Feast of Corpus Christi. What we're celebrating today, you might call it like a part 2 of Holy Thursday. Because on Holy Thursday, we remember Jesus instituting the Eucharist, taking the bread and wine, and literally transforming them into his body and blood, and giving them to his disciples as food for the journey. Today's the feast of the body and blood of Christ. And so when Jesus took the bread and said, "This is my body," and he took the wine and said, "This is the cup of my blood," he didn't say, "Think about this," or "Look at this." He said, "Do this. Do this in remembrance of me." Take in this body and blood that I'm giving to you as your sustenance. Because he wanted to be with us in the simplest way. And that's why he took such simple elements of bread and wine, changing them into the substance of his flesh and blood to give us life. And so that's what we celebrate at every single Mass. And so to make this Mass as if it were our first Mass that you ever went to, as if it were your last Mass, if today was the last day of your life, and as if today was the only Mass that you got to be at, it demands something of us. That we can't just come here the same way that we've always done it every single Sunday. It has to be a struggle. Struggle. Because when you struggle, you're putting forth an extra amount of effort. You're making something so key to your heart. And to struggle means to not give up. There are a couple of struggles today in the reading. So if you remember in the first reading, God tells the Israelites, remember how much you had to struggle in the desert. How much you had to count on me. Those 40 years they spent in the desert. Why did they have to spend so long? God was testing their intention as to whether they wanted to serve God with their whole heart. That's why he fed them with the manna in the desert. There's another struggle today. Remember in the gospel where Jesus says, I am the living bread, and the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. Imagine you were in the crowd. Who wants to sign up for that? Of course, the Jews are scandalized. They say, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? That is a struggle. Only those who end up following Jesus after hearing these difficult words are the ones who are able to find fulfillment through him. Look at the struggles in your own life. Tell me, what responsible parent does not struggle to put the needs of their children ahead of their own needs? Waking up in the middle of the night, right? All parents know that. Or, what athlete does not struggle to put everything that they can and leave it on the field and give it their best effort? Or think about our young people who are striving to live virtuous lives, who are trying to practice the virtue of self-control in a culture that tells them, do whatever you want with your body. That's a struggle. A struggle demands a lot from you and me. So since today is the Feast of Corpus Christi, I'd like to take this image of, when we look at bread and wine, I'd like to take the image of grapes. So the Roman poet Virgil, he said that grapes that grow on the hillside produce the best wines. Why wouldn't the grapes that grow in the fertile valleys produce just as good of wines as the ones that grow on the hill, on the slope? Well, the point of this is that the grapes, the best wine, grow from the grapes that struggle. The best wine comes from the grapes that struggle. Because you see, when you have grapes that are in a low-lying valley where all the rain and water can come and pile up, then what happens is all of those grapes become plump, they become swollen, they become fat, and there's too much water in them, and that dilutes the flavor. Not so great. But the ones that grow on the hillside, you know what they have to do? Their roots have to extend a little bit more. They have to struggle to soak in all the nutrients from the soil and extract the flavor from the ground. That's why the grapes grown on the hillside produce the best wine. Only by struggling do these grapes produce what they can produce. Isn't that pretty much true for everything in life? Think about all the struggles that you have had to do to get to where you're at now. This past week, I went away for a few days. So if you were trying to call me, I wasn't answering, not because I didn't want to talk to you, but I was able to get away. And what happens when you go away, when you're on vacation? Well, do you think you eat more or you eat less? You're definitely eating more. Do you think you drink more or drink less? Do you think that you're going to be exercising more when you're on vacation? Probably not. Do you think that you're going to be working more when you're on vacation? Do you think you're going to be exercising more self-discipline when you're on vacation? Probably not. And that described us very much. All of those things, you're basically letting your guard down. Not that you're doing bad stuff, but you're not struggling very much. You're just kind of vegging out, kind of giving in to whatever bodily desire you have. I like that piece of food, I'm going to eat more. I like that drink, I'm going to take it. There's no struggle. And so for us, it was like we were in the valley, those swollen grapes that do not put up a struggle. And as a result, do not produce good wine. To get back to Father Robert and our newly ordained last week. Thinking back 6 years ago when I was ordained a priest, how wide-eyed I was. As any young person, you're going to go conquer the world and change the world. Over time, though, that joy remains in your heart, but you start to realize this demands a struggle. Just like any newlywed couples, you went into it, your marriage, thinking, this is going to be great. It's all sunshine and rainbows. There's not going to be any problems. And then you realize there's a struggle involved. And I see that over these next few years, what Father Robert will be demanded of what it continues to be demanded of me, we have Yvonne here, our seminarian, what will be demanded of him, that struggle will continue to be in effect, just as it is for all of you in whatever vocation God's called you to. The struggle demands our effort. The struggle demands our response. Because otherwise, we could just be like grapes in the valley that get swollen. Everything's super easy. You never put up a struggle. You never fight. You never try your best. But you're not going to produce very good wine. If we struggle to do our best in our different areas of life, then why would we not struggle to do our best when it comes to our faith? Why wouldn't we struggle with prayer when it doesn't seem like God is answering us right away? Why wouldn't we keep trying? Why wouldn't we struggle to be the most virtuous people that we could be and respond to God's grace in our hearts? Why would we not get down on our knees and thank God every time we came to receive the body and blood of Christ that He's provided for us? Why would we not? The grapes that struggle produce the best wine. We who struggle can produce the best wine. The best response to God's nutrients being poured into us. Because even though those grapes will eventually be crushed, think about how Jesus, that grape, so to speak, on the cross, was crushed for our sins, and all of that wine, His blood, was spilled out for you and me, that then went into the ground. And as wine is fermented over time, as you pull it out of the ground, it produces the best possible wine. So it goes with us. That just as Jesus produced the best possible wine for you and me to be poured into our hearts through His own struggle on that cross, we get to participate in that. And so we get to produce the best possible wine along with you. So brothers and sisters, as you come forward today to receive the body and blood of Christ, let's not make this any ordinary Mass. Let's let the struggle continue in our hearts because God is pleased with a struggle. Let's make this Mass as if it were our first Mass, as if it were our last Mass, and as if it were our